Hello, everybody. Welcome to Upstream.life. On this channel, I bring you interviews with people who are shaping business transformation with technology and are changing the world of business with a bunch of ideas. Today's guest is Sridhar Rajaram, who is the founder of Upaghna Ventures. You can write to him at sridhar@upagnaventures.com. But a little bit about Sridhar before we begin, right? He has been a branding professional for 2 decades, working for the likes of Royal Challengers Bangalore, the IPL cricket franchise, and he was also the head of marketing for the apparel brand Louis Philippe before setting up Upaghna Ventures in 2018. At Upaghna Ventures, Sridhar specializes in bringing out the semiotics of the brand and is able to help legacy businesses stay relevant in a highly competitive world where supply chains and customer interactions have gone digital. He has transformed companies and brands such as Namdari's Retail, Bonham Your Coffee, and Articulate, to name a few. The cumulative business advantage that his firm has provided to family businesses is pegged at more than 100 million. I'm sure many of you watching this will benefit from his wisdom. This episode, by the way, is brought to you by Bonham Your Coffee, the very best gourmet coffee that allows you to be your own barista. Bonham Your Coffee is great to kickstart any meeting and helps me work with the right dose of caffeine through the busy work week. Thanks for joining in, guys. But now back to my guest, Sridhar. How are you? Welcome to the show. Can you tell us a little bit about Upaghna Ventures and what you do?
Thanks, Vishal, for having me on the show. At Upaghna, what we essentially do is work with businesses across different scales and sizes to help them build new ventures. Right, that's at the heart of the Upaghna model. And the reason for that is there is what we've realized over a period of time is businesses at different scale, right? Whatever be the scale, whether they are $1 million in turnover or 20 million in turnover, right? There comes a time at their in their business cycle where they need to move to the next level. And typically, what we've realized is making the shift from their current sort of size to the next big growth sort of size is where a lot of these organizations struggle with their with multiple variables. One is execution capability internally, the value system internally, right? The speed at which the system can move over a period of time, the resources that are required to sort of execute this large change. And the reality is most businesses struggle to sort of put this mix together when they have to get to the next stage, which is where somebody like an Upaghna steps in, right? So what we do is work very closely with these founders, business owners, to sort of identify the next big business model that can sort of scale up their business, design those models, sort of build them out, validate them out in the market, and then scale up the model if it's actually sort of taking off, right? So the ultimate aim being that with the new ventures that these businesses are building, hopefully at some point of time there is an opportunity to unlock value in the market, or build scale that can add a significant amount of value to the organization itself. That's the Upaghna space, right? Working with businesses across different scales and sizes to help them build new ventures.
Why do this, Sri? I wanted to understand from you that you've been passionate about brands for about 2 decades now. Why do Upaghna at this point of time? Do you think it's a special occasion or a special time to be in India at this point of time with so many legacy businesses of the past trying to rediscover themselves? I wanted a little bit of backstory. What about branding interested you? Pardon me. And from there on, you went on to marketing, and then you now complete the whole picture by understanding end to end with technology, right?
Yeah.
How did that come about? A little bit about that and why you want to do this at this particular time in India.
I'm not sure there is a specific reason to why this is critical now, but the reality is what we're realizing maybe post COVID, maybe around the time when industry started sort of figuring out the potential challenges and constraints that may open up because of the situation around. What we've realized is not just legacy businesses, even large organizations and organizations that have not yet reached scale, right? Most of these businesses are now sort of stepping back and rethinking how they need to grow to the next level, right? And that, fortunately for us, has opened up a very interesting opportunity, because the reality is scaling up a business is a skill set that is not always inherently sort of available within a corporation, right? The idea that you can unlock value by completely pivoting your existing business model, or by transforming your current model, or let's say by adding on a new revenue stream to your existing model, right, are all very, very difficult decisions within corporations, right? Business as usual is typically business as usual, and growth alongside business as usual is typically the easiest way out when one is stuck with a challenge, right? The ability to take risk is not all prevalent across organizations, right? But what we've noticed very recently and interestingly, Vishal, is that many of these organizations have a view that uh, building these new organizations, building these new ventures, inherently demands a significant amount of risk that they're not used to, and that is a bigger constraint than anything else, right? That's a bigger mindset constraint than anything else. The fact also is a lot of these legacy businesses that you call that you're calling them, right? And I personally don't like calling them legacy business. They are more because legacy business has a sense of a, a small negative connotation, because in many cases some of these businesses and brands are the ones that actually have tremendous equity in the market. It's just that internally organizations like these reach a certain stage and scale beyond which they are comfortable doing business as usual, and the real push for change comes only when there's a generation shift happening within those businesses, right?
Okay.
Especially if when they're family businesses, or even in organizations when there is a management sort of upheaval, right? And for us, both these situations seem very, very similar, because the requirement at the end of the day in both these cases is, when a new team is taking on with a completely new vision, are they equipped internally enough to sort of drive that vision, right? Which is where we felt this was the right time for the Upaghna kind of model, because we said, look, this is not a case where you can walk into an engagement with a business or a brand, and wearing a consultant's hat, right, for example, and lead them through a path where at the end of the engagement, you're still letting them loose by not helping them actually build it, but actually just showing a journey, or a roadmap, right? And more and more we've sort of spoken to businesses and legacy businesses, or family businesses around. That's a big white space, because most family businesses are, the reality is, most of them, especially when there's a generation shift that happens, most of them are very, very aware of what is the next big growth opportunity. And at that point of time, unfortunately, they are in a system where their uh, only hope of support, their only support system is actually what you typically call the consulting ecosystem. And I think there is a clear understanding now that the consulting ecosystem, in its purest form, while it adds a lot of value in certain cases, especially in cases of an organization looking for hyper growth, may actually stifle a bit of the speed that is required to sort of get to market, right? So I think that is where Upaghna kind of model steps in, builds out builds out an opportunity for these organizations to look at hyper growth, look at experimentation, look at business model reshuffling, look at reorganization, look at transformation internally, without having to let go of the speed that is required to get to market, in the scenario around us, right? Where most of these businesses are competing with young, faster startups within the ecosystem, well funded, no lack of capital in the ecosystem. And then here you are with a beautiful brand, with great equity in the market, trying to figure out how you are going to get to the next level.
But I wanted to know a little backstory to yourself quickly. How did you develop this skill? I like it because you're not a consultant. You are a person who has skin in the game with a company which has great equity. You don't want to come in and say, I will give you some ideas and leave. You are there to execute the idea. You're almost like mentoring the new generation to the next level.
Correct.
And that's the equity that you carry, because your failure will actually mean that you are responsible and you take that equity, right? And a
Absolutely.
little bit, I want to know a little backstory to yourself. How did this happen? It started off with the experience at college, school, maybe your reading habits. How did it happen? How did it come to this stage that you were interested in this subject?
Much of this honestly, Vishal, is not planned, right? Much of this happened. None of this has been by design. Much of this happened by default, right? And the Upaghna stories is a classic example of how this sort of fell in place almost by default, right? Because the Upaghna story was not modeled the way it is today. About 2 years ago, when we sort of kicked this off, right? It happened because somebody that we knew, one of the larger family houses in Bangalore, reached out to us, and sort of presented a very, very typical large family business problem, saying, look, we seem to be one of the larger businesses in the city. Everybody else in our category seems to be consolidating themselves with some of the larger players, or seems to be unlocking value with a large funding ecosystem around. But somehow, for somebody like us, who has as a brand, tremendous equity in the market, but and also been around for ages in a city like Bangalore, somehow we seem to be struggling in figuring out where our next big spark of growth is going to come from. And when we sat and started analyzing, we figured out that, like I said, the reality is the people running that business exactly knew where they wanted to head to. And we said, look, you've reached out to us to help you figure out your issues, but I think what will excite us is actually trying to sort of solve those issues for you, but by actually building this outside of the ecosystem, because that's where you will see a lot of value. If you run with your current
Yeah.
ecosystem, you're not going to be able to unlock value, right? So that's the background to Upaghna itself, right? So that's where the transformation piece kicked off for us. When that engagement ended, we realized there was a lot more value that you could bring to the table as somebody executing the business
Right.
alongside current business, than actually doing it from outside as a consultant. But that's the recent past to Upaghna, right? My personal interest has always been that, for the couple of decades, or for the 1.5 decades that I've been managing brands across categories, reality has always struck us that, the marketing team continues to be in the marketing brand management team continues to be in silos within large organizations, right? And as much as you want to integrate them with with the core business processes, and look at marketing as revenue driving functions within organizations, the reality is those changes are yet to happen across categories, across large organizations, right? So about 5 years ago, when my last large corporate assignment um, uh, was fairly well entrenched, and sort of well settled, is when I believe that there's a tremendous amount of opportunity to actually step out of large systems, and try and see how, not just marketing as a function, right, but try and see how technology and marketing as two functions could actually come in together to build value for businesses, right? And one thing led to another, and then, the what we realized was, again, these two are just enablers, right? Whether it's technology, whether it's marketing, there are larger strategic pieces of the puzzle that one needs to fit in before you bring in any of these enablers, right? Which is where the Upaghna story sort of began. And we said,
Okay.
look, all the enablers is something that we can bring to the table, but more importantly, we can also sit with you and define your strategic roadmap.
Okay. I want to understand another thing, that you're a cricketer, right? Did that have a large impact on you, on the way you shape your life? You learn about failure, successes. Did that transform into your work ethic?
It does to a large extent, right? I mean, whether you're a cricketer or a sportsman of any kind, right? There is a significant amount of learning that happens from being on the field, working with a team, trying to lead a team, trying to be the workhorse in a team, right? Multiple facets of the game that you take on at different stages of your career, right? So, it's fair today, looking back at, what all we've done as sportsmen at some point of time, and thinking through that, look, maybe we missed an opportunity to sort of really live our dreams. But the reality is, you could take away a lot of learnings from playing competitive sport at the age when you're growing
College,
up, because yeah, it does. I think in reality it does. 4 decades down the line, when you're actually building businesses, there are many aspects of playing a game competitively, playing a game the right spirit, that actually helps you when you're building this organization. I think part of it is the fact that, for a long time, many of us took risks, saying, look, our careers can head in one direction, and that is, you want to be a serious sportsman of some sport, right? And more often than not in our cases it has always been cricket, right? But
Yeah.
I'm saying the ability that the the farther you're able to push that risk taking ability in your
Sure.
career, right? Like you've done as a sportsman, till you were 21, 22, all of us have stars in our eyes, thinking there's something down the line. But you've pulled yourself to an extent where you've said, okay, enough is enough, and you've taken your risks, right? But I think there is a story somewhere there for people like us who are also trying to build something, right?
Absolutely. Okay. Now you manage the IPL. You know RCB in the IPL, right? And you managed Louis Philippe as a brand and several others like TTK Prestige, right? Okay. When you work with a family business or a young business entering the D2C segment or trying to transform itself into a D2C kind of world where supply chains are largely digital, what do you think is their competitive edge in running a business that is consumer driven, right? Or any business that's trying to transform themselves in this modern era? What are the three or four tips that you give them to stay competitive? Because I get queries, they think it's digital marketing, but they spend heavily on digital marketing without getting any returns, right? It's very difficult to understand that data is the story, but how you use that data and tell the narrative and transform it down the business chain for execution is something that everybody struggles on. Give us a few tips, and then let's take some more questions after this.
So there are two parts to this, right? The first part is the operating part of it, the transaction part of it, which is actually building the right model, and then what results out of building that model, and what you're able to do out of that is where the significant value add actually happens, right? But and that's the piece that most businesses today are interested in, saying, look, if I go D2C, I'm going to be sitting, and to be very crude, the I mean, just like there are businesses reaching out to you, trying to figure out the D2C story. When we speak to business and brands, the story is very simple, right? I need to go D2C because at the end of the day, I'm sitting on tremendous amount of data, and hopefully that will I mean, I'll be able to derive insights from that, right? But the reality is the enablers that are required to get to a stage where the data actually starts making sense is as critical as actually being able to execute D2C, right? And this is over many months of working with multiple brands that want to go D2C, right? Our understanding is there are so largely there are three very, very simple parts of the stack, right? One is at the heart of the stack is the kind of technology that you're building that enables you to go D2C, right? And it could be as simple as saying, look, I want to build an e-commerce site, I want to build a Shopify site. It could be slightly more complex, saying I want to build a subscription-based platform, or I want to build a membership-based platform, or it could be that I want to build a completely transparent supply chain-based platform, right? And the complexity of what you are building at the heart of it from a technology perspective is as critical as the next part of the stack, which is the simpler part that you talked about, right? Which is the entire consumer acquisition module of the stack, which is digital marketing, social media, SEO, SEM, content, creative, right? The part that allows you to acquire new consumers and drive new consumers. And on top of it is probably the most important but the least sort of thought through part of the stack, which is actually your last mile delivery, which is at the heart of every D2C business, right? Today, the reality is most businesses want to go D2C because the significant cost in building digital businesses is hidden in the last mile delivery piece, right? The commissions you are paying platforms, the expenses you are taking on to ensure last mile delivery, uh, working with delivery partners, and the cost that it entails. So the last mile piece of warehousing, order processing, picking, packing, delivering, right? That entire module is where a significant amount of costs get padded up when you go digital. And today most businesses have realized that trying to solve this by going to platforms, right? Because you're not able to build the last mile delivery piece, most businesses are saying, okay, let me work with platforms who are able to solve this part of the puzzle for me. The reality is at scale, that business becomes so inefficient from a unit economics perspective that you're going to turn around and say, look, I'm spending so much of money on ensuring last mile delivery, I'm paying so much for commission and for delivery for my platforms, that is there merit in me building it on my own? But the reality is, at that scale, building it on your own becomes a significant challenge for most businesses, right? By which time by the time you've hit certain scale and realize this, it becomes very difficult. So what we've realized is, from day one, there are these three parts of the puzzle that need to be that need to be in place for a good D2C stack. The technology part at the bottom of it, there is the acquisition stack at the middle of it, and then there is the last mile consumer engagement stack at the top of it, right? So in many cases, we actually go back to partners and actually tell them that, look, your most critical piece is actually right at the top, which is your last mile delivery engagement, right? Which you're not thought through, because you assume that will fall in place because you're working with partners. So, from a perspective building a D2C business, these are three stacks that a typical business should look at very, very closely, both from a cost and an efficiency perspective. A lot of efficiency is built in the middle part of the stack, where you're able to. That is science that is now fairly well entrenched in most systems, right? You know how to push the right levers in digital marketing and acquisition and things like that. The last mile is something that most businesses are learning today, because inherently they've never done the last mile delivery, right? Whether you're a retail business, whether you're a CPG retail business, whether you are a consumer retail business, you've never done that part, because that's not natural to your system. Your natural system is a distribution system for long, right? The lowest rung of this, which is a technology piece, is again something that most businesses are today able to solve, because there are multiple modules available off the shelf. You're working with decent partners to build that out. But the complexity involved in building the right kind of tech for scale and the right kind of business model is far more than just being able to set up a Shopify site, right? So once
Right.
this is done, I mean, it's not advice, but our view has been that these three parts of the module have to be in place before you actually go to the more important and more logical and more practical drivers of good D2C business, which is data and data management and data practices and things, right? How much of data are you able to derive out, and how is it, what kind of insights are you able to derive out of the data, and how those insights actually drive your next set of consumers or your next growth, right? So to us, this is where we like to spend a lot of time, because it's also the space where there is a significant amount of experimentation possible. Multiple modules across each of these three parts of the stack that can get experimented before you optimize the entire stack. And then obviously, if you're doing this right, that at the end of the day, you're going to be sitting on tons of data that is gold mine, right? And for not for a moment are we saying that's not critical. We, in fact, most of our discussions end up with significantly complex data practices that are put in place for organizations, right? And when I mean significantly complex data practices that drive a lot of efficiency at scale, right? And that will happen naturally as a progression of going D2C. But one should not forget the fact that there are strong levers that one needs to build before you look at the data stack, right? That's been our view at least at Upaghna and the brands that we manage.
Yeah, that's fantastic, right? For those of you watching this at upstream.life, you'll get the full transcript of the interview on the website. Do check it out. You could also write to Sridhar at upaghnaventures.com. He's got several case studies, Adukale, Namdaris. He's got Instapure and a couple of other brands. Sridhar, but I cannot leave you from the show. I want to take the next couple of minutes to quickly understand what do you do other than Upaghna and running and helping family businesses and other businesses wanting to transform themselves into the modern world. You're doing that very effectively. What is Sridhar? What does Sridhar spend time doing on his free time or spare time?
I think the answer to that is very simple, right? If you're running your own business over a period of time, it's difficult to figure out time to do things that you like, right? But it's critical to do. It's critical to sort of take the time out and do things that sort of let you unwind a bit more than normal, right? So, I mean, the fact that I ran a library business for a couple of years has always been very, very close to me, right? So, and not to sound cliched, but reading books and spending time with books is something that I do enjoy a lot, right? And it's not something that's come up in the last couple of years. It's been something that you would know has been around for ages now. Um,
Quick book recommendations then. I mean, we'd like to hear your recommendations. Couple of them.
I do prefer books that are lighthearted, right?
Name
So,
some. Name some for us.
I mean, I'm a classic believer in the Wodehouse stories, right? So I can read Wodehouse any time of the day, any time of the year, right? I must have, probably read it 4 to 5 times, and already finished it 4 to 5 times, and I don't mind going back to it, reading it again. Interestingly, and this is something that a lot of people who know me know this. Still enjoy going back to comics. Right, I spend a lot of time reading Calvin. I can spend time reading Calvin day in and day out. I like my Tintins. I like my Asterix. So I know I'm still at heart. I still like books that sort of allow you to sort of smile at the end of the day. Right. So of course there are serious business books. There are a lot of recommendations that I can sort of share with people who write to me. But those are the things you will realize over.
Okay. Okay. A quick 30-second guide to happiness from Sridhar.
Very difficult, but 30-second guide. Yeah, okay. So happiness is at the end of a lot of risk taking, right? So take your risks. Take your risks at the right time. Take your risks with enough to back you, to allow you to take those risks, right? And you will find happiness at the end of it, right? I think it's not easily attainable, for sure, but the right risk at the right time, that's the story to happiness for most of us, at least, who want to be in this space.
And that's why you should entrust your business with, upagnaventures.com. Sridhar, thank you very much for being on the show with Upstream.life. Thank you for supporting us. Guys, watch the full transcript on Upstream.life.